Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike, and I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. We're so happy you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by Brad Banz. Brad is a retired captain from the Wichita Fire Department, retired chief from Colwich, Kansas, and a good friend of mine. Been doing a lot of volunteering with AFM almost from the very beginning. He's going to be joining us on our next in-person training when we head to Malawi here in another month or so. Really excited to have my good friend Brad here with us today. He's going to be talking about suppressing bushfires. So looking forward to that. Before we get started with that though, I'm going to pass things over to another good friend of mine. Errol is one of our fire safety advocates for Africa Fire Mission, and he's going to get us started with a few words of encouragement.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief Mike. Welcome again, Brad. And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's lesson. Thank you for attending today's lesson. And before we get into the topic, I'd like to give us a word of encouragement. A word of encouragement comes from our basic, uh, the basic, actually, the three components that make up a fire. What do I mean? Everywhere where we live, we are human beings. And we tend to, when human beings live in a place or stay together at a particular place, they'll end up or they might get into a conflict, or rather, they might brush shoulders or they might get into a very heated argument. Now, remember, when people get into a heated argument, there are always three components that are present. There is the fuel, there is the heat, and there is oxygen. So, in order for you to do a nice conflict resolution, you must understand where the heat is coming from, the source, who is adding the fuel to that conflict. Are they arguing or shouting at each other or listening to each other? And then at that particular moment, they need to breathe so that they calm down, not to shout at each other. So always, whenever you're at a department or at your workplace or at your home, remember, before you get into a heated argument and someone adds fuel through their words or action, just breathe oxygen and then the conflict will end. That's the word of encouragement. Over to you, Mike.
Awesome, thank you, Errol. That's a great. I never really thought of it that way. I love it. Very good. Before we get started with today's training, let me just touch on a quick couple of administrative notes. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, you can earn a certificate of participation for today's class. That'll be emailed out a few hours after the class concludes. If you can't stick around for all that time, there's still an option to earn that certificate if you'd like. Later on in the training, I'll drop a link to a Google Drive folder where you can find today's training and all of the other trainings that we've done so far this year. If you go answer a few questions about what you learned, we can get you a certificate of participation for that, after you've watched the recording of the training. Uh, if you can find that through our webpage, www.africafiremission.org. If you go to the resources tab, there's all sorts of great resources there. I highly encourage you to go and check that out. All of our resources are free. A lot of great things to help you and to help better your communities. So please go ahead and check that out. When we get finished at the top of the hour with the formal portion of our training, we transition into our tea time. Errol will lead us through that tea time. It's a great place where you can ask questions about today's training or just do some networking. If you see from the chat, we've got firefighters from all over Africa and the Middle East that are joining us. So, great place to do some networking and learn from your fellow firefighters. Uh, I think that covers everything I'd like to say for now. So I'm going to pass things over to Brad to get us started with today's training.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for coming in this afternoon. So I think this is probably, hopefully, some very timely information that we're passing along. I know in Osceola County, there have been some big bush fires. Um, I know here stateside, we've had some big fires out on the west coast of the U.S. and even locally here. It's been kind of crazy. We've had snow in our state, but it's winter and everything dries out. Um, and so our grasslands are dry. The snow has melted off, and just here within the last 2 or 3 days, we actually, after the melt off, we had a warm, dry, windy day, and in the one of the neighboring counties. They actually had a bush fire that got into some cedar trees, and they actually had a fair sized fire down there. Um, so it just shows you how quickly things can dry out, and we can have bush fires. So a little bit of background about myself and my experience. Um, I got my start on a rural department 40 years ago. Still on the same rural department, even though I retired as a chief. I stayed on as a firefighter. Our department is part of a wildland task force. We go all over our state when we get called up to deploy out and help out other departments all over our state whenever we have major situations. So um, that's kind of my experience as far as bush fires. So anyway, with that, I'm going to load up my PowerPoint presentation, bring it up down here. So what we're going to talk about, just do a quick review on the parts of a bush fire. Go on down here, and then we'll hit the three different factors that affect bush fire behavior. That's important as far as planning our strategy, and then actually talk about our three fire attack strategies. Uh, there's two major ones, and then there's another one that I like to include in there. So got a lot to talk about, so we'll go ahead and move on. So first off, parts of a bush fire, hit on those real quickly and review that. Some of you guys, this may be review. Some of it may be new. Start out up here on top. Can everybody see my pointer up here? Mike, can you
Yeah.
guys see that? Okay. So up here at the top, talk about the head. That's going to be the most quickly advancing part of your fire. That's going to be guided by your wind. Your wind's going to determine where your head's at. Okay. And that's going to determine the direction that that fire travels. Up here, where I'm pointing up here where the spot fires are at, if you have a lot of wind, that's going to take your firebrands, your embers, and that will carry those over the line, and that will create your spot fires. Your spot fires, they can grow rapidly and create all new bigger fires and create a whole new headache for you. It's important if you start to get spot fires that you get people on those and get those knocked down in a hurry, because they can grow rapidly and create a whole new set of problems for you. Um, I don't know if anybody followed the fires out in California. They had winds that were well over 100 kilometers per hour, and they were creating a lot of spot fires, and that's what caused those fires to advance so rapidly. Okay, out here you have fingers. Those are caused either by differences in fuel, You might have like heavier fuel, lighter fuel. Could be differences in terrain that will cause a finger to form, or failure to get a good suppression effort on part of your fire, and that will start to carry a finger out, and that can actually get a head or cause the head to get bigger. So it's important to get those fingers snuffed out if you see one starting to form. Okay. Over here, it's got the what's called the black. Okay, that's the area that's already burned. And then the green, that's the area that hasn't burned. Okay, that's important as far as safety. We always want to try to stay in the black if we can. We refer to black and the green. Okay. Okay, you have your flanks, shows the right flank and the left flank. Okay, those areas on your flanks aren't going to burn as rapidly as what your head fire is going to burn. A lot of times those are good areas to tie off on and start your suppression effort on your flanks, and work your way around and get to the head. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then your head and your heel, okay, or your heel rather, that's the rear of your fire. And if you get a wind shift, that can become your head. A lot of times we'll make an effort to if you watch the weather forecasts, and the weather is forecasted to change, the wind's forecasted to change. It's important to get that heel tied off, get a good suppression effort on that heel, because it's not going to be burning as rapidly. So good to get a good suppression effort while it's not burning very rapidly. Get that fire put out before the wind shifts, so that you don't have a big head that forms. Okay. All right. So three big factors that affect bushfire behavior, and that's fuels, weather, and topography. Like I said, I want to touch on these because all of these play a factor, influence our strategy as far as how we're going to fight that fire. So it's important that we know something about all of these. Okay, we'll start out with fuels. This is very basic information: ground fuels, surface fuels, and aerial fuels. And there's classifications. I think there's 40 some types of fuels that they get really technical on some of these, but I'll just give you a few example of these fuels. But the three basic classifications are ground fuels, surface fuels, and aerial fuels. And I'll break it down a little bit. Kind of in this diagram, you can kind of see how it progresses down, starting at the ground level and working up. Okay, the ground fuels, you have your organic matters, roots, and dead leaves. When that stuff starts to dry out, it'll take off and start to burn. Stuff tends to burn a little slower, this type of material, but it will move across the forest floor. Probably going to be the easiest to suppress, but when it starts to build up, you can get, especially a lot of this, the organic matter, dead leaves and stuff like that. When you get a good buildup of it, that can become a problem. A lot of times what we'll do to get rid of that. You can go in and do prescribed burns ahead of fire season to try to get rid of that. Makes for a healthier forest floor, healthier grasslands. So they'll go in and burn all that out and keep that from becoming a problem. Okay. Kind of moving up, we get to our surface fuels. So you get your grasses. You can get like a really heavy buildup, heavy grass, tall grass. The part of the country that I'm from, that's what I'm most familiar with, is grassland. We can get running grass fires. We have a lot of wind here. 80, 90, 100 kilometer mile an hour or kilometer winds that will run these things faster than what you can keep up with them. So that affects your strategy as far as how you're going to set up and fight these things. You have to you can't keep up as far as we'll talk about direct attack. You have to fight them another way. Okay, shrubs. If you look right here, there's an apartment building. You have shrubs that are right next to this apartment building. Can cause problems. Shrubs out in the bush country too can cause travel, higher flame heights, things like that. Okay, timber litter. What I mean by that is like dead timber that's laid over, that's built up. That can cause big problems. That can be a big problem out in the bush country. Logging slash. What logging slash is where they've gone in, logged it out, left piles of the leftover debris from where they've cut the logs out and just left the rest of it piled up. Whoops. And then down here at the bottom, crop residue, where they've gone in and grown wheat, maize, other crops like that. The leftover residue after they've harvested the crops. Those can make for some big fires as well. So that's all different types of surface fuels. Okay, aerial fuels. These can present a challenge where you have fires where you have like mixed surface fuels or even the ground fuels mixed in with the surface, like I said, surface fuels or potential aerial fuels. You want to stop if you can fires from getting into these aerial fuels, like through the branches. We call branches your snags down here at the bottom. Snags are like dead tree limbs, things like that have fallen, dead trees that have fallen and laid over, moss on the side of trees, dead moss, things like that. Okay, once fuels get aerial, especially in forested areas, they can become what they call crown fuels. They can travel, especially if you have any wind. They can go tree to tree to tree, and then that becomes a challenge to overcome. So You see like this tree over here that's got fire at the bottom. You want to try to keep these surface fuels from getting into these branches and traveling upward and getting into the crowns of these trees and becoming crown fires. So that's one thing that when you're planning and working to combat these fires, trying to get these lower limbs off and keeping fire from traveling upwards. That's one of our tactics we want to use. So, okay, weather. Going to talk about wind, humidity, temperature. We want to be watching current weather conditions, and we also want to be watching for future weather conditions. All right. The reason we want to watch future weather conditions, I talked a little bit about like the heel. That's important because we want to know if there's going to be any wind shifts. It's also important for our safety. And during even if we don't have a wind shift, just knowing what these things are going to do up here during the day, because that's going to affect fire behavior, what that fire is going to do during the daytime. Okay, so your wind, as your wind speed increases, that's going to drive that forward speed direction of the fire. And like I talked a little bit about, um, it increases those spot fires. It'll drive those brands over the line and create spot fires. You can see right here, this fire that I have at the top, that's looking from the top. That's a good wind-driven fire. That's pushing that head out and giving it that nice U shape. That means it's a good wind-driven fire. Here's a really good picture. This guy's from Cal Fire from the West Coast, where they had some of the big fires earlier a few weeks ago. Okay, so he's talking about January. So January for us in the U.S. is very unusual, um, especially out in California, to be having big bushfires like that. Usually, they start out there. They start getting their rainy season. Um, for us here, um, because it's our winter here. It's winter out there too, but our grasslands start to dry out. We may start to get a few, as long as we don't have snow, we may start to get a few bushfires here, just because the grassland is dried out. If we get some good wind events, we get a lot of cold fronts coming down from the north that will drive with these high winds and stuff will drive these fires. So, but for them, it's highly unusual. They start to get their rainy season out there this time of the year. So, very highly unusual. But you saw how the wind was pushing those fires out there. Um, they had I want to say like 125 kilometer-an-hour winds that were pushing the ones that hit on the north side of LA County a few weeks ago. So very extreme event, and the humidity got down to 5 to 10%. So very extreme event. Well, okay. So let's go on. Humidity. The humidity is a measure of your moisture in the air. So that's also going to be an indicator of how much moisture is going to be in your vegetation. So the lower the humidity gets, that means that your vegetation is going to dry out. Okay. And the obviously the drier the vegetation gets, the more aggressive it's going to burn. Okay, like I said, the humidity during those LA wildfires, that got down to 5%. That's extremely, extremely low. So that was just like having tinder. I mean, that's just as dry as it can be. So that burnt readily. So that's why they had such an extreme event out there. Okay, temperature. Okay, and to go along with temperature, we can add the sun. As long as you have the sun on the fuels, that's going to add to the temperature as well. That solar heating, that will also add to that temperature, heating and drying those fuels out. Dries the moisture from the fuels. Fuels burn quicker, more effectively, because the heat drives those fuels out. Can say if you have fuels that face the sun, they're going to dry out quicker. For some of you that are going to be on the equator, close to the equator, it's not going to make that much of a difference. For me example, it's going to be opposite for many of you. For me, anything that faces south is going to dry quicker. For many of you, you guys that live south of the equator, anything that faces north, okay, faces towards the equator, that's going to dry out quicker. So the temperature and the solar heating, that's going to be a factor. Let's back up. There are some, while I'm talking about temperature, there are some websites, while I'm still talking about weather. And I said you guys want to monitor the weather. There are some websites, and you can get on weather. You can put on your city. I'll do, say, I had somebody from Machacos. So we'll just put Machacos as an example. So Machacos, just type in Machacos weather into your phone. And the Weather Channel is a good one because it will list on the Weather Channel. That's a good one. Weather.com. And it will have hourly weather reports, and you can pull up you can pull up the hourly weather reports, and it will have the temperature, the wind speed, wind direction, the humidity. So, and that's important so that you know if there's going to be a wind shift. You can see what the humidities are going to be. When you start something you want to start really being concerned with is usually when you start getting humidities that are down below 40%. You want to start being concerned about that. And like I say, you also want to start looking for wind shifts as far as planning your strategy for the day. Any wind shifts, so that you can know how to plan your fight for the day if you want to plan on putting fire line in, things like that. So we'll talk about that a little bit here in a second. So anyway, so that's why it's important to know the weather. Okay, talk a little bit about terrain. Different terrain features, why they're important. Okay, so slopes up here, upper left-hand corner. Okay, slopes. They can carry fire. They will tend to allow fire to advance very quickly. The steeper the slopes, the quicker a fire will advance. A slope is a bad place to try to make a stop if you have any type of fire, any type of fuel on that slope. That's a bad place to make a stop at. Like I said, especially if there's any type of slope to it at all, any type of grade. As far as planning your strategy is to try to make a direct attack on it. That's a bad place to try to do it at. Okay, you have a ridge. This is a ridge that's going to be where your slope comes to the top of that hill at. A ridge can be a good place to dig in to make a stop at. You might have some concerns with the winds coming to the top. You might have some concerns with the winds coming to the top of that ridge. But it's still a good spot to make a stop at, because when your fire gets up here, it can actually slow a little bit as it gets to the other side. It burns that fuel out, and it's going to slow as it tries to advance down the other side of the hill. So that's a good place to possibly make a stop at. Okay. Peaks. These are peaks. It's going to be like basically like the top of a mountain, top of a hill. Like I said, you're going to have wind tops of these peaks. Your slopes are going to be coming up. Not much of a place to really make a stop at a peak. Canyons down here. Canyons, you want to try to avoid trying to work down in there and trying to do much of a stop down in these canyons. Canyons are going to channel wind. So they tend to be a little bit dangerous as far as trying to make a stop in, because, especially if they have any fuel. If they have a lot of fuel in them, fires are going to burn very rapidly down through there because of the wind, the way they channel the wind. If they have fuel, I'm going to say that that's going to be a no-go for the most part. Saddles. Okay, that's going to be a saddle right there. It's going to be You got a high point here, slopes downhill and back up to another high point there. Saddles can act to channel wind through the middle of them. Also have to be very cautious of those because of the fact that they will channel the wind through there as far as working down in those. Fire can blow up and run through those as well. Okay, box canyon. That's a box canyon. That's going to be a canyon with steep walls and a dead end at one point. That's a definite no-go in those. Stay away from those. Okay, drainage. These are drainages, okay? Water runs downhill off a ridge. Water runs downhill off a ridge. Okay, fire, wind will channel and run down through these drainages. You have to be very cautious about those too. Okay, let's get into fire attack. Talk a little bit about some different fire attack options. So talk a little bit about direct attack, indirect attack, and mop up. I like to include mop up because that's an important part of what we do. Okay, direct attack. That's when we're going to actively engage that fire. We're going to actively take that fire on. We're going to be right there where the fire's at. Be working near that edge. Okay. We're going to be putting control lines in, fire line in near the fire, possibly. Be using water. We can be using dirt. Other means of extinguishment. But and what I mean by that is be using our fire beaters, whatever we can use to actually put that fire out with. Okay. Most of the time, if we're going to be doing direct attack, these are going to be more of the low intensity fires. Okay, when we start getting in on the higher intensity fires, and what I mean by low intensity fires, either like flank fires or fires with lower flame heights. Okay, ones that aren't running. You start getting the ones that are running. I told you, like you guys saw the picture that I showed you, like the LA fires. Those things had very high flame heights, very fast running fires. You're not gonna engage the head of those with a direct attack. Not with most of the time with the resources that you're going to have. You're talking mostly about 1 meter or less flame heights, just as a good rule of thumb. Okay, so little picture here, just as a kind of a good rule of thumb here. Some good guidelines here. So usually what we're going to try to do, you always want to have a good anchor point. And the reason we're going to anchor off, what I mean by anchor off, that's like a starting point. We want to start at a natural barrier. We can have a creek, stream, a good natural barrier, a road, something that we can go back to start at. A lot of that is for our safety. Plus, that's a good point, like on the flank of the fire, so it doesn't get around us. Okay. There again, a lot of that's for our safety too, but that's a good point where we can get a good stop on that fire, because there's already a good fire break there. Okay. So that's why we have a good anchor point. That's why we want to anchor off of something that's already a fire line established. Okay. So we can start either with our extinguishment, we're doing direct extinguishment, putting water on it, using our fire beaters, whatever the case may be, or we start cutting in hand line. Okay. So we're going to put our hand line right there, right on the edge of the fire. Okay. Like I told you, the hand line, we're doing a quick hand line around this. It's only going to be good for about fires for 1 meter flame height. Okay. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about using locally available resources. Some of you all may have, I don't know if we have any, I didn't see anybody from Kenya Wildlife Services on here. If you guys have got access to like air assets or anything, that's awesome. But I tailored this presentation to just so you guys would learn about using your local resources that you have. But air assets are great if you have them. That's something that we could probably talk about in a different presentation. So then we can move on. Okay, so just some local resources that we might have available. This can be a homemade fire beater. So we just got like a broomstick handle. And you can take old tires, inner tubes, whatever you have available. You can see how they bolted a strap, here, made a fire beater. If you're using fire beaters, you don't go up and down, fanning the fire. You go keep a low profile, close to the ground, and back and forth across the fire. By going up and down, you're actually fanning it and making the fire worse. Backpack sprayers, like they would use for putting pesticides, insecticides, fungicides, things like that on with. Those work great, especially for fires that aren't that big. Garden cans. I said, if we're getting local people involved, use what they have. You know that out in the bush, you don't have a lot of people, so you may have to get the locals involved. This is things that they're going to have. Okay. So that's why we got to get creative here. Okay. If you do have water, it might be from the local water providers. Okay, the ones that have the boreholes that provide water to the towns and the villages. That's where fire brigade members, chiefs, if we have any chiefs on here, work in advance, talk to these guys, get some partnerships. Okay. Say, hey, this is going to be a service to your community by helping out if we ever need you. Okay, haul water out for us. There again, shovels, any hand tools, small hand tools that you would use in farming. Okay, and if you have your local the trucks like these guys. Looks like these guys actually have some sort of a bush rig, whatever type of uh, trucks that you have available, use them. So, okay, cut line. So hand line shows these guys right here, cutting hand line. Like I said, that you can do that uh, for direct attack. So say the fire's right here, direct attack. These guys could be cutting that hand line in right here. Whoops. So you're going to do, like I said, my example, about 1 meter wide. It acts as a barrier. Okay. So we talk about, I know a lot of you guys are structural firefighters. We talk about, Errol talked about the fire triangle this morning when he gave his presentation. Structural guys, we talk about taking the heat away a lot of times. So you guys are used to that by putting water on. With this method, a lot of what we do is we're taking the fuel away by this. So even with all of the resources that they would have out, saying like California is rich in resources. They have, hundreds of fire engines and helicopters and everything else. But if you get a fire that has flame heights of 100 feet, you think that cooling it with all of the fire engines and helicopters that they have, they're not going to be able to cool it with all of that. So this is what they do a lot of times. They'll get equipment in to cut hand lines. So they're taking that fuel away or letting the fuel burn out. So anyway, so this is what they're doing here is cutting hand line. Okay. I'll show you guys a little bit of an example here. So to cut hand line, so there again, just showing you locally available tools here. I said you're going to start, going to anchor off from the road. And I'm showing you it's over here. Using locally available tools. So the first thing you're going to do, you have a firefighter here. You're anchoring off here. Here's your fire. You're going to anchor off here. And this first guy, he's got a machete. He's going to start clearing vegetation. So he's going to clear, if there's any bushes, there's tree limbs hanging over. Remember how I talked about trying to keep surface fuels on the surface and not getting them up and making them aerial fuels. Going to do that. He's going to clear any bushes or anything out of the way that we might have. So he's got this, whoops. He's got this machete right here. So he's going to do that. Then the next guy coming along, he's got a rake. So any leaf litter, loose grass, anything like that, he's going to clear that out of the way. The next guy, he's going to start clearing the first layer of soil out of the way. And this guy, he's going to go a little bit deeper. He's going to start clearing that next layer out, trying to get roots and everything busted out of the way. And then he's going to get, with the shovel, get what's left of the roots and get that layer of mineral soil exposed. Okay. So you can have more than 5 guys. You can have, like just as an example, we'll have, here in the States, our hand crews are usually 20 guys. So you'll have a squad of like 5 people and a supervisor, and you'll have 3 squads of those guys. So you usually have like 20 people on a hand crew. Okay, and they'll all have tools like this. I showed like this guy here having a machete. If you have chainsaws, that's great. That works even better for, for clearing bushes and trees and things like that out of your way. So, but yeah, you want to make that strip 1 meter wide. Okay. Think of anything else. Oh, so as you're moving along, the way this is going to work, this guy, he's going to clear a little bit. This guy's going to do his job. And as they do it, they're going to scrape, and then they're going to advance. They're going to scrape, and then they're going to advance. And they're going to keep moving. They're going to keep moving. Like I say, in this example, our anchor point's down here, so they're going to move to the left, move to the left, move to the left as they're advancing until they get all the way around here to the other side. Okay, so talked about that. So I want to move on to indirect attack. So indirect attack, that's if you have a bigger fire where you can't control it by making a head-on attack and attacking it directly. So we're going to attack it from another point. We're going to attack it away from the fire. Okay, so we have to usually we'll put in control lines away from the fire. That's your indirect attack. Okay, that's on bigger, more active fires. Okay, so that's where your planning comes in. That's where you need to get your weather forecast to see what that fire is going to do, which way it's going to be moving, your topography, see what your topography looks like, see what the humidity, the temperature is going to be for the day. That's going to help you predict that fire behavior. So that's all going to help you to predict how to put that control line in. Okay. So if you have an active fire too, you have to be prepared for brands that are going to spot across the line and have people available to get on those spot fires. Okay. So in here it shows different examples that I put in about ways of attacking some of these fires. So you got a hand crew here. You're actually using fire, burning out fuel, getting some of the locally available resources from your, say, your county government resources that they may have, excavators, motor graders, dozers, things that you can use to construct line with. Okay, so like I said, when you start doing your indirect attacks, you have to be able to predict that fire movement. You have to look at what the weather is going to be doing. So the weather, the topography, and that will help you to determine where exactly to put in those control lines. Okay. So you're putting them in way ahead of the fire. You're going to drop them in somewhere between a natural and a man-made barrier. Say in this example, we have a road. Okay. That's your wind direction. That's the direction that the weather forecasters are saying the wind's going to be out of. So here's your fire. You can see the head of the fire. The head of the fire is moving that way. Wind's moving that way. So we've determined that this is a good place to lay in that control line right there between that road and the natural barrier. So if you have heavy equipment, that's awesome. Okay, whatever equipment that you can get, because you want to try to make a good heavy control line. These are going to be bigger, usually bigger burning fires if you're thinking about putting in indirect line. So that's why you want to make a bigger control line. Okay. Something that we're going to be thinking about doing in these types of fires are doing firing operations. Firing operations, that's also can be a separate lesson on doing that. Firing is going to be burning out fuel between here and here. You have to be careful if you have a really strong wind burning this way. You can't do that in the middle of the daytime because that can go bad on you, and your fire that you're trying to use to burn out fuel can actually jump that control line. Okay. So you have to, there again, you have to use the weather to your advantage and do a burnout operation and burn that fuel out when the weather is just right. So, like I said, firing operations, that's a whole different lesson. I'm just bringing that in there to share with you that that's a tool in your toolbox as part of your indirect fire attacks. Okay. Like I said, be prepared for those fires to spot over and have somebody available to attack. Okay. Like I said, here's some.
All right, Brad. I think we're getting up against our
Okay.
time limit.
Yep. Almost there. Just here's some tools there again. There's a local farm tractor that you can use to cut in line. So the motor grader, backhoe. Make those partnerships with the local people as far as having tools. Just got mop up real quick, and then we will be done. Okay, mop up. So mop up is basically completing your extinguishment. That's important. The reason I put that in there is a strategy is if you don't do a good mop up, your fire can when you have another weather event, your fire can jump containment, and it will flare up and you'll have a whole new fire. So that's why mop up is important. So what you're doing is extinguishing your remaining hot spots. Okay. Helps to stop the fire spread. Like I said, there's two different types of mop up, your dry mop up and wet mop up. Your wet mop up, you're using water to help extinguish. And what you do, you expose your hot spots with your hand tools, whatever you have. You cut up trees, logs, your limbs, your snags to expose anything, and you extinguish them with the water as you go. And you're going to work from the edge of your perimeter into the middle. You'll usually set a distance that you want to work in, like you might do 10, 20, 30 meters in, whatever it might be, and extinguish all your hot spots. Okay. Dry mop up. Difference is that if you don't have a lot of water to work with, you're going to do it without water. You're just going to open everything up, spread out your brands, uncover them, spread them out. A lot of times you can step on them with your foot, extinguish them. So you're just getting them exposed, opening those hot spots up, and getting them cooled off. Like I said, you can your logs, your limbs, your snags, things like that. If you can cut them up, pull them inside the perimeter where they stand less of a chance of blowing those brands out across the perimeter. So if you've got a creek, a pond, something like that, you can dispose of them in, that's great. I've done that a lot of times. And there again, work from your perimeter, or set a perimeter and work in. So, okay, any questions?
Looks good. We'll grab our questions here.
Yeah, so we can do that at tea time.
Yep, as we transition into our tea time, let me wrap sort of the formal portion of our training up today with a big thank you to Brad. Covered a ton of material there. Really great overview, of the of bushfires. We're going to continue with our bushfire series this month. We'll be talking more about fire behavior next week, so please be sure everybody comes back and sticks around for that. Big thank you to Brad for covering that material and for working with us again today. We always enjoy when you get to come out and lead some training for us. So thank you for that. And thank you to all of you for attending. We don't take for granted that you're taking your own personal time and using your bundles and things to come here. So really appreciate all of you coming out and doing things to better yourselves and better your communities. So at this point in time, I'm going to wrap things up. We've got plenty of seats available here. If you know of anybody that may benefit from our training, please feel free to share that registration link. I hope to see everybody next week. Thanks.